Welcome to the Real Estate Deep Dive with Paul D. Garrison from JP and Associate Realtors. Today on the deep dive, we're going to be taking a look at some interesting trends that are starting to develop here in the DFW real estate market and at a national level. Please bear with us. It's going to be a little longer video than normal, but it's some really good information. So first off, we're going to take a look at the average sales price across all four of the major counties here in the DFW Metroplex. I really want you to focus in on kind of the tail end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. We'll notice that the average sales price has actually climbed quite rapidly over the past couple of months, with Collin County kind of leading the way. Of course, that's reflected in this next chart, which actually shows the average percentage the sales price is of the original price or the list price of the property. So you can see in the chart, I've highlighted where 100% is, or what 100% of list price is. So you can see on average, homes were selling above list price, a good deal above list price for a lot of 2021, but they did start to drop back down, and Dallas County actually dropped back down below 100% briefly. And then we see the spike of the recent months up to over almost 108% in Collin County. So I'm sure some of you are all saying this really isn't a surprise. But bear with me. I want to discuss why this is happening and then some other very interesting trends we're starting to see. Big reason you've probably heard from the previous deep dives, it really comes down to supply and demand. We've had very tight supply, very high demand. Well, let's take a quick look at how both of those are trending as well. So at the national level, let's take a look at year over year of changes in inventory for February 2022. So we can see that in February of 2022 compared to 2021, we're actually almost a quarter, or 24.5% average nationally, lower than we were in 2021. So inventory or supply has actually gotten tighter. Now here's that interesting trend part. If we actually look at year over year for March, we see that this is actually starting, it's still lower than 2021, but we're seeing that gap start to shrink a bit. Nationally, we're at 18.9% difference from where we were in 2021. So those previous charts were year over year. Now let's take a look at month over month. So February of 2022 compared to January of 2022, what's inventory doing nationally? Well, we're down 8.1% difference. So even February, we were still dropping. Inventory was still dropping from a national level. But when we look at March's numbers, we actually see that trend that we saw year over year is actually holding true as well. We're actually up as far as inventory. So we're actually seeing an increase in inventory nationally of 1.6% compared to February. So that's, again, a good trend and kind of maybe a change in direction we're seeing across the country. Now here's a chart that again highlights the four major counties inventory levels for DFW. And we actually see that it kind of follows the national trend. We were steadily dropping over the past 3 years, but here in the last month between kind of February and March, we actually are starting to see that kind of turn upwards, which is a good thing. So here's a chart of new listings. So these are listings that have come on in this month. And we see a nice upward trend in March again. So that kind of reiterates that we're seeing more supply starting to come into the market, and we're seeing a good bump in new listings. And this holds true nationally also. This chart here compares 2021's new listing count each by month compared to 2022's. 2022 being in the blue, 2021 being in the green, and we actually see that the count is climbing, and we're actually ahead of where we were in 2021, another good sign. Now, if you've watched previous deep dives, you know I like to put everything kind of in perspective, and I've talked a little bit about how really kind of the pre-pandemic years of 2017, 18, and 19 are kind of our best judges of what a normal market is like. And we see those lines in the gray and the two different lighter blues on this chart. Now we see the green line, which is 2021, and the orange line, which is 2020. I would say those are kind of non-normal or abnormal years in the market. And we see that obviously the dip of whenever everything shut down in 2020 for the pandemic, and then how it kind of rebounded a bit, but was still a lot lower than the other, normal years. Now the dark blue is where we are in 2022. This seems to be following a good normal trend, and actually I'm hoping might even pass the previous years of 2017, 18, and 19, or at least get up to those levels again. So that's a positive or hopeful sign as well as far as new listing count goes. Now, while we're seeing a lot of new listings come on the market, we're actually, and so much so that they're actually passing or surpassing the active listings in March. What that usually means is that we're actually seeing there's so much demand in the market that it's just absorbing, and those new listings are being sold right away, so they're not carrying over as active listings. So a lot of these new homes that are hitting the market are still selling within a very short time period, and that's what's helping to keep prices up. And here's a quick chart of the closed sales for the 4 counties here in DFW, and we see that it has that same bounce or upward tick in March that we were seeing, or towards the in 2022 that we were seeing along with the new listings. So again, the new listings are just basically selling as quick as they can come to the market. This last chart is something I think we really need to keep an eye on, and this is showings per listing. So we've talked about, great, we're starting to see some more supply come in the market. It's being gobbled up just as quickly as we can put it in the market, but this chart really helps us see what's the demand side of things. So this slide is showing how many showings or buyers tours are each listing getting on average per county. And we'll notice that Collin in the light blue and Denton County are kind of leading the way there as far as demand goes, with getting, in the case of Collin County, up to 30 showings per listing on average. Now, the important trend I think we need to watch is the drop here starting in the beginning of 2022 in both Denton and Collin County. We start to see that demand start to waver or start to wane, and we're dropping from over 30 showings in Collin County down below 25, 23 showings on average per listing. It's important to note that this chart only includes March's numbers. Obviously, we're still in the middle of April, so we haven't seen the numbers for April, where we've seen the largest increase in interest rates. As a matter of fact, I just recently came across this article from Money where interest rates nearly hit 7% on April 18th. So that impact of those interest rates may have some interesting effect on the housing market here locally as far as buyer demand goes. So why does that affect buyer demand? Well, let's take a quick look at this chart. Even if we're staying with the same price house, let's say $440,000, when interest was 4.75%, your principal and interest payment would be $2,295. If it jumps up to 6%, you're now looking at a monthly payment of $2,638. So again, that's really kind of eating into people's pocketbooks. So not everyone's going to be able to actually stay at that same price range that they were searching. They're going to actually have to look at a lower price range. So let's take a look at interest at 4.75%, the payment on a $440,000 house being $2,295. What happens if we go to 6%? What price range are we now having to adjust for our target home that we're looking for? Well, to have a similar type of payment, we're actually going to have to go from looking at a $440,000 house down to looking in the $380,000 range, because that's going to put our payment around $2,278 a month. So to keep within that same payment range, we're going to be looking at a much less expensive house or smaller house. So from a buyer's perspective, it's either going to cost us more each month to get that same house that we originally were looking for, or we're going to have to set our sights a little bit lower, which is going to slow the demand at the higher end of the homes. So if you followed the deep dive before, you probably have heard me quote or mention Allie Wolf before. She had an interesting tweet earlier this week. She tweeted that, talk to a loan officer about rates, and quote, mortgage rates are definitely impacting buyers right now with little reprieve in sight. I have been getting creative on the financing side to make things work. She goes on to say, probably fine, but some PTSD hearing creative and financing in the same sentence. On that, I kind of have to agree. That's creative financing is kind of what we saw the cause of the last housing crisis. So let's hope that they're not getting too creative. So again, along those lines, normal lending standards is to have 28% or under or less of your income going towards housing. Well, if we look at this recent Black Knight report, we see that today we're actually, for the average income, is about 29.1% of that is going towards a payment of a medium-priced home with a 20% down payment. So we can really see the impact of this if we look at also from 1996 to 2000, the average was about 25%. And just not that long ago in 2021, the Q3 percentage was at 22.4%. So the recent increase in interest rates has really impacted or increased the percentage of income that's having to go towards housing for the average consumer. One last thing to note on this chart is if we take a look at the center one, and back in 2007, right before the last housing crash, a whopping 34.1% of the average person's income was going towards their housing. So in previous deep dives, you heard me refer to this index that's put out by the National Association of Realtors comparing the affordability of homes. Now, this is based off of the average income, interest rates, and several other factors. But how affordable a home is what this index tracks. Now we can see, obviously, during the peak of the housing crisis, we were at one of the highest, most affordable times to purchase a home, and that was a score rank of 197. Now, obviously, the lower it is, the less affordable the homes are to purchase. Well, we've dropped here quite recently, and a lot of that's due to the interest rates. We're down to about an index rating of 135 today. So I'm always a big proponent of keeping things in perspective. So a lot of people are saying homes just aren't affordable anymore. Well, they're definitely less affordable than they have been over the last 10 years, and that's reflected in this chart. But if you actually look, they're still actually more affordable than they have been from 1990 to 2000. So we're still actually within a reasonable range of purchasing a home. That being said, I want to share this quote from Ed. He's the AVP of Housing Economics at the Mortgage Bankers Association. He basically says nobody really knows what's going to happen over the next year. Now, I have to agree with Ed. No one's got a crystal ball, and no one really knows for sure what's going to happen throughout the next year. But what we can do is we can track trends at both the national level and at the local level and figure out what's best for your specific needs. I'd love to help you with that. Please reach out and let's have a conversation. Many of the metrics and numbers in this presentation are based off of the national real estate market. However, local areas can vary. Please give me a call and we can discuss your situation. Have questions about your specific needs or location? Please contact me at 214-683-8188 or paul@pauldgarrison.com. Want more information about the housing market and related issues? Be sure and check out my blog at www.pauldgarrison.com. Thank you for your time. Please take a moment to visit our website at www.pauldgarrison.com.